Hey, hey, hey. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad y'all here. I was thinking this week about the current narrative around rest and how we need rest and how we have not had rest. And if we don't rest, what does that mean for us and how we've never been able to rest? Um, I read a couple books last year about rest. One was called Rest is Resistance, and another one, let's see, do I remember what the name of it was? I'm kind of weird in that sometimes I know what a book cover looks like, but then don't always remember what the name of the book is. Oh, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. So last year, between Rest is Resistance and The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, I learned a couple things. I learned specifically like what's the difference between rest and rejuvenation. Those are different things. I actually, for myself, was able to identify what's the difference between being sleepy and being tired. I also recognized that this grind culture was not something that was necessarily something that I needed to center in my life. But also, there was this nagging feeling the entire time that I was violating myself, mostly because I actually love my work. It is not something I'm doing just to make money. I have always been able to get a lot of energy actually from speaking on large stages about different topics. It is my purposeful work. Um, and I start seeing things like, living things don't necessarily have a purpose, they just are. And I think there's some beauty in looking at plants and livestock and um, fish and trees and going, we are just like that. Because in some ways we are. But also, every single thing in the universe has a purpose. It is purposeful. We need it for a reason. And to think that we don't is, if you've ever done anything from a um, just an ecological standpoint, if you have something in the wrong place, that it'll be invasive. It'll take over. It won't have the natural things necessary to keep it at bay. And so I think it is helpful for me today to go into why I use Myers Briggs sometimes at work to help folks understand what it means to lean into like who you are uniquely designed to be. What you see here on the screen is my Myers Briggs personality type, and I know that there are people who don't believe in these kinds of things. But the thing is that they tend to be, pretty accurate, quite frankly, in terms of what they say tell you about people. And so this is one example of Myers-Briggs. This is just my first two letters. I think most people wouldn't be shocked to know that that I'm an extrovert. So, whatever. Um, but when I think about this one right here, the second facet of extroversion, if you can't see that, that says expressive. And what it means when you think about a person being expressive is truly um, that you can tell what I'm thinking on my face, that I people find me easy to get to know. I'm self-revealing. I've right, and I think if you've been here any length of time, you have probably seen that I talk a lot. I find it very easy to express my feelings, and others consider me to be very humorous and easy to get to know. When I have to be contained or controlled or harder to get to know, and I hope you can see this. This is stressful for me, and how do you know that? Because how long this bar is. So I am not like other extroverts in that actually I prefer for other people to introduce me instead of being at all the parties and introducing myself. I actually appreciate quiet. I like being by myself, and I actually prefer to be in the background. I don't like to be the primary leader. But why am I showing you this about myself? Because you can kind of see something like this about every single person, quite frankly. And when I consider that every person has a personality, even if you don't believe in these kinds of instruments, it makes me think about the historical nature of groups of people, period. You see, there's a book called The History of the Songhai People, and it talks about specifically these warriors on the continent and how their natural tendency was to defend themselves against anything that might be coming against them, right? And I think, what does that mean if you have an entire group of people who are, you know, mostly 80% African in some way? Now, if you've done your ancestry DNA or any DNA test, you'll likely see that you've got, I don't know, anywhere from 6, 7 different countries on the continent. Of the 54 countries on the continent connected to you, and of those 6 or 7 different continents, no telling how many different tribes you are part of. And so it's not precise at all. But you are definitely not going to find people who were not resistors, people who did not rebel, who did not revolt, even before colonization, even before ever seeing a white person, well, centuries before we were introduced to the concept of chattel slavery as we know it here in the US. And so when you consider that, what it looks like to be actively under attack and then not to fight back, that feels like a disconnect. It feels stressful. You see, if all week I got to be contained and private and harder to get to know, I'll find that by the end of the week, I'm exhausted. If all week I do have to be on the stage because I'm not very enthusiastic, actually, I'm calm and quiet and like solitude, I'll find that by the end of the week, I'm tired. Just so you can, connect this to your own life. When I was working in engineering, the clothes I wore, khaki pants and polo shirts, the level of detail I had to consider, consider and think about, the steps and the processes that I had to make sure that I was well aware of. If all I could do was just bring a little color to my life, if all I could do was be the person to inspire people around these projects, I'd find that at the end of the week, I'd be less tired. Because as the poet David Whyte said, is that wholeheartedness is the antidote to fatigue. It's the reason why I can be extremely tired. And then you tell me you got Beyonce tickets, and all of a sudden I got energy because I want to do that. See? And what does it look like if your natural way is to fight? Like, I cannot imagine being in the bed asleep. And I'm not sick. I'm not dog tired. I'm just sleeping. And somebody comes in and attacks me. I cannot imagine that the next right action is, I need to rest, honey. I've been fighting too long. That feels like a violation. Well, let me say it right. My therapist told me when you say feels like, that's not actually describing a feeling. I think that is a violation. It feels upsetting to me, actually. Now, here's my point. And if you're still here, I waited a while so I could make this point because I was told not to make it. I was told to be contained and private about this, but you just saw my Myers-Briggs. It ain't my way. And I ain't gonna let nothing keep me from being exactly who God made me to be when I am right. Do I want to be effective? Absolutely. And sometimes people have to stand up for what is right. We have a person running for school board here in Kansas City, Missouri, who has a record in the military that suggests, and this is public record, that, and let me make sure I get it right because I don't want to, say the wrong thing here. Um, that they were found guilty of engaging with prostitutes. Um, they had to be um, court-martialed in the state of New York. And when you watch this 5-part series that is also public from military.com on this individual, they there were like 5 people, and the women who were quoted in that 5-part expose said things like they were raped. They said things like they were trafficked. They said things like some of the women were underage, which meant they were children. And so the Kansas City Star published an article 2 days ago, and it said the Kansas City area school board candidate has a military criminal record. He says it doesn't matter. He does say it doesn't matter. In fact, in the information that he was sending out just as recently as yesterday, he said that this is an attack by the establishment, attacking his military record, not his criminal record. This note from his campaign says the establishment is attacking his military record because they know the race is tight. Help us fight against these dirty tactics. Part of the problem that we have in politics this today, local, state, and federal, is that well-meaning people are quiet when they should not be. And I will honor that I have been told not to say anything about this at all. But if the voters are going to vote on April 8th, I mean, what are we going to do in the schools? We about to have prostitutes with parents instead of donuts with dad and muffins with mom now? Is that what we about to do? Is that what we about to do? And this idea that someone can just say something, it doesn't matter, and we just go along with it, is concerning to me, but it makes me tired when I don't say anything. And here's what's fascinating. Just as recently as yesterday, this candidate stood up in front of 80 Kansas Cityans and basically said, vote for me. I'm running for the at-large school board race, and handed out materials after this provable public Star article was published. Not a word said. Everybody silent. Maybe that's who they are. I don't have everyone's Myers-Briggs to see if they are controlled and harder to know in private. I don't know that. But I can tell you that's not how God made me to be. And if I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be tired for good reason. Not being quiet about somebody engaging in activities that are criminal in nature in the military. And the answer is not, oh, I didn't do it. That wasn't the response. The response wasn't, I didn't do it. The response was, that was in the military. So if you do a background check on me as a civilian, it's going to come back clean. I do not know our superintendent, Dr. Collier, personally, but I will tell you this. As a woman, I do not want to report to someone who has no discipline around what it looks like to engage with and work with and alongside women. And I will speak up against it every single day. Now, Tanisha Ford is my friend. I support her campaign. I believe that she cares about what's best for children. But even she cannot make me be quiet about something like this. And we have got to find our voices as people. We sit around in back channels and we are quiet. And my thing is, if quiet is who God has made you to be, if private is who God made you to be, then be that. Whatever you are, if that is who God has made you to be, if that is the lineage that you have, be that. If you are no backbone having jellyfish, that, as my grandma would call it, then be that. Then be that. Because you won't be tired in doing so. But the God I serve tells me not to be weary in well-doing, and to not make this public information, and for people not to talk about it, is a back turning on our kids here in Kansas City, Missouri. And I would ask you, when you think about what's happening all across this country right now, this week I was in my book club. You've heard me talk about this when it happens in my church. And the statement was made, none of this stuff impacts me. So, you know, I just don't. mm. If for you that's true, fine. But is that who you've been made to be? Or is that your trauma response? Because the exhaustion, the collective exhaustion we feel, I believe is not about work at all. I don't believe it's about fighting at all. I believe it's, are you a fighter? Do you have purposeful work? Because if so, some of us need to be the mouthpieces for people who are deathly afraid to speak out, because that is who God made you to be. My name, Nicole, means victory for the people. That's what it means. I cannot, I cannot be silent about this and then be tired on the backside. And then what, stranger things have happened. What if this person gets elected? And then we sit around like we did for the city manager, because when the city manager was put in place, hundreds, if not thousands, of people knew that there were three other candidates who were more qualified on paper and in experience. And we bit our lips, we bit our tongues, we turned our backs and said, it's politics. And then when the city is millions of dollars in lawsuits because of behavior of the person we allowed to be put in place, then we say, oh, I knew. I knew. I knew. If you know something, then say something. It reminds me of when we would have the same people over and over and over again terrorizing our communities, and folks would be scared to say a word. We would just be hearing over and over again, snitches get stitches. Snitching is being complicit in a situation with someone and then telling on your accomplice. But being a credible witness is, I saw you, and for the good of the whole, I told on you. It is about my values are humor, justice, and competence. I would argue that the opponent for the at-large race isn't even competent. Has spent zero time working in education when Tanisha has 20 years of experience working in education and has been on the school board before. Her election campaign, the last time folks believed that there was no way she could win because she was up against the Patty Manser, that Nate Hogan put a full page article in the Star and said she was the person who cares the most about Kansas City kids. Tanisha beat her handedly. She has been a student of Kansas City Public Schools. She is the most qualified for this job. Competent against someone who has no experience in education at all. And then when you consider Justice, a person who has no real need to send her children to public school and chooses Kansas City Public Schools for her children. She and her husband are students of the Kansas City Public School system. Her brother, Terry Nooner, the coach of the women's basketball team out at Iowa, listen to me, lived in Kansas City her whole life. Both her mother and her father, students of Kansas City Public Schools. When I call her to complain, she's responsive. The opponent who says we got to be transparent made no mention of this military criminal record. You see, because it's not the military record that's under attack. These things are quite provable. If you've been honorably discharged, show your paperwork. Because what I read says that as a result of what happened in Bahrain, dismissed. I cannot imagine being Dr. Jennifer Collier having to report to this. And I've been told for a month, don't say nothing. Now the article's out. It's been published in the Next Page Kansas City. It's been published in the Kansas City Star with links for you to read about it on your own. At this point, it's public information. It's a violation. And I'm offering to you today, my loves, that when you violate yourself, you're going to always be tired. And right now, we need folks leaning into their ancestral heritage of who they are and precisely who God made them to be, to fight. Asking you to fight is not an insult. And as the great Dr. Daniel Black has said, we better open our eyes when we pray. It's time. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.